Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, France says that it's captured a top extremist figure in Mali. Oumeya Ould Albakaye's arrest comes as French troops prepare to complete their withdrawal from the African country. Also, Kenyan Ferdinand Omanyala has been putting his country on the map with his speedy times in the 100 metres. His victory at the African Athletic Championship was the continent's first for the distance. And as the world animation elite meet in the French town of Annecy, the African industry is taking more and more space. I speak to the founder of Lagos Comic Con and studio founder Ayodele Elegba about the growing international appetite for African content. But first, the French armed forces have announced the arrest in Mali of a high-ranking extremist from the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. After weeks of reconnaissance, air and ground forces moved in to capture Oumeya Ould Albakaye near the border with Niger. He was once seen as a potential successor to the ISGS leader Adnan Abu Walid al-Serrari, who was killed by French forces in August 2021. Our regional correspondent Sam Bradpiece tells us more.
For many, Oumeya Ould Albakaye is not a household name. But for those in military circles and those on the ground in Mali, his arrest is really quite a big deal. He was one of the regional heads of a terror group called Islamic State in the Greater Sahara and controlled a territory ranging from parts of Mali to parts of Burkina Faso. He was responsible for multiple attacks on positions of the Malian armed forces and also for attacks on the French armed forces, part of Operation Barkhane, which is currently withdrawing from the country. The French say that Albakaye was responsible for laying down a network of improvised explosive devices on roads leading out of Mali to neighbouring territories where French forces are currently redeploying, and also that Albakaye was responsible for multiple attacks on civilians as well. Now, they've hailed his arrest as a significant success, saying that it will destabilise the high command of this terror group. But it's worth remembering that when you look at United Nations reports on the situation in Mali, attacks by Islamic insurgents continue to rise rather than decrease. And so perhaps Albakaye's capture is really more of a Pyrrhic victory than anything else.
Sam Bradpiece there for us. Now, Egypt has agreed to ramp up gas exports to Europe. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed between Cairo, the EU and Israel on Wednesday as EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen was in Cairo at the East Mediterranean Gas Forum. Von der Leyen's bloc is trying to wean itself off Russian fossil fuels. Some Israeli gas is already sent by pipeline to liquefaction plants in Egypt before being sent on to Europe. But Egypt will have to see major infrastructure investments to significantly increase Israeli gas exports. Wednesday also saw von der Leyen pledge €100 million to help Egypt's food security, which has taken a hit with the war in Ukraine. And looting broke out in the eastern DR Congolese city of Goma on Wednesday as thousands joined an anti-Rwanda rally. Demonstrators attacked Rwandan-owned shops. Police used tear gas on crowds, and at least one person was reportedly injured in the unrest. Tensions between DR Congo and its neighbour have surged after Kinshasa accused Kigali of backing M23 rebels who captured the border town of Bunagana on Monday after weeks of clashes with Congolese troops. Rwanda's long denied any involvement with the militia. Nevertheless, DRC's vowed to defend every inch of its territory.
We are going to do everything possible to drive these criminals, these terrorists, and their supporters out of the national territory. Rwanda does not like us, and we are not afraid of it, and we will fight it. If it wants war, it will have war.
Kenyan Ferdinand Omanyala has been putting his country on the map with his speedy times in the 100 metres. His victory at the African Athletics Championship was the continent's first for the distance. The newcomer is expected to zip past the competition in the World Championships, and he's determined to trounce his American rivals on their home turf next month. Shirley Sitburn has more.
Here is the world's fastest man. Ferdinand Omanyala holds this season's record for 100 meters, 9.77 seconds. Now the Kenyan has won his first major title, African champion. Coming up next, the World Athletics Championships in Oregon.
I'm in good shape. I'm in very good shape, and we have a month before we go to the World Championships. And I can tell you that we're going to beat the Americans in their own home.
Omanyala started his sports career in rugby. For 5 years, he muscled up, becoming a successful sprinter. Now aged 26, he believes he will cement a spot among the world's best. He's the 8th fastest runner in history and the first African to make it into the top 10 sprinters group.
Sprints has been dominated so much by Americans and Jamaicans. They should now start forgetting that because now the Africans are coming. Currently, I'm the world leader, so I'm not going anything less than a medal there in Oregon. I'm going to make Kenya proud. I'm going to make Africa proud.
Conditions in Mauritius were far from ideal, yet Omanyala and 2 South African athletes ran under 10 seconds. The head of World Athletics was impressed.
I'm watching world-class times. The men's 100-meter final, 3 athletes under 10 seconds. African sprinting is really coming of age, and those competitors will be very competitive in the World Championships in just a few weeks' time in Oregon.
Ferdinand Omanyala had a 14-month suspension in 2017 for using illegal substances, which he has denied. Now back on track, he wants to clinch a historic victory for the whole continent.
Now, every year, the French alpine town of Annecy becomes the home of international animation. Year on year, though, there is more African representation. 2021 was even dedicated to creators from the continent. For the first time, 2022 features pavilions dedicated to specific national industries like Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. One of the African animation veterans who hopped onto his own flight of fantasy to represent in Annecy this year is Ayodele Elegba, the founder of Lagos Comic Con and Spoof Media, one of the city's biggest animation studios. I'm lucky enough to have him with me now. Thanks so much for speaking to me. First of all, I hear that some people call you the Dream Maker. Why is that?
Oh, okay. Well, I think it came from the fact that I was one of the first people who actually believed in the animation industry. First of all, the comic industry, and I kind of make the dream of the young creatives come true. In the likes of having a Comic-Con, the first ever Comic-Con in Lagos, Nigeria, and of course bringing 2D animation back to the forefront in Nigeria. So people see that like it's like something that's almost impossible to do, but I was able to do it, and I think the name just stuck, Dream Maker, for someone who's like he's making the dreams of African youths come to fruition.
So you're like the geek godfather.
You could call it that.
Now, we were talking about Lagos Comic Con a little earlier on, and I got very, very excited. And obviously, people who have been attending it have been getting increasingly excited about it because it's gone from strength to strength. 300 when it started about 10 years ago. Last year, 7,000. But what would be interesting to know is what is the focus of it? Is it on African characters and African content, or do you see your kind of classic Spider-Man, Loki, like Harley Quinn, classic international comic characters on display?
Okay, I think what made me start Lagos Comic Con was the fact that I didn't see comic characters of the same color as I have, and I just wanted a representation of the African, the ebony black skin, in comic books. As in, I want young kids to see heroes that look like them. Mm-hmm. And secondly, because I was a geek, I'm still a geek. There was this slaw, against people who are actually comic lovers. If you read comic books, they see you like you're a child, you don't have a future, you don't have an ambition. So I said, look, can we have an event that will celebrate people who love comics, who love animation, who are geeks? Mm-hmm. That was 11 years ago, and we had the first one. 300 people appeared. I was like, wow, we have 300 people in Nigeria who actually love comics. and then we've grown from there. And that shows that there's a huge love for comic books, animation, and the creative space is actually growing. And for me, I'm proud to say that since Lagos Comic Con started 11 years ago, we've had young creators now working with big studios like Disney, Netflix, that came to that first Lagos Comic Con, and now they're all over the world doing great stuff, and making Africa proud.
And how healthy do you think the animation scene specifically is in Africa, and what would you like to see change on that front?
For me, I think we have a fledgling industry, but I think one of the things that I found out at Annecy today was that I think we need more of developmental money. We need money to help animators develop, their stuff to an extent whereby they can actually get co-production and get real funding that could help them push their dreams forward. And I think that's one major thing that we do not have, unlike other economies that the government actually supports animation. We have not been very lucky to really have that.
But internationally,
government support.
though, is that compensated by any kind of international appetite for African animation and African content?
Oh, yes. Today I was discussing with distributors on they need African content. They want diversity in the kind of content they have on their streaming services, and they really want that content. Okay, but then it's a business. They want to be sure to put their money in the right places and pick the right content that would actually stream well and make some good viewership for their platforms.
Thank you so much, Ayodele Elegba. It was lovely speaking to you, and we wish you and all of the other African geeks and animation professionals the very best in developing that industry. But unfortunately, that is all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again. Till then, take care.
Join us on Europe Now, where we are in 2 EU countries in the shadow of the war in Ukraine, Poland and Hungary. Both have taken in large numbers of refugees, and both have joined European Union sanctions packages against Russia. But more recently, political differences have emerged between these traditional allies. We'll be exploring why and how on Europe Now.
Europe Now, presented by Catherine Nicholson on France 24 and France24.com.